Hey everyone, thanks for joining, and I hope you are having a great week. And today we have very special speaker here, Rizel, and we have been talking a lot about community and open source, and we thought of getting a session over here, which can help our projects to grow, and a lot of things she's going to discuss. So I would like to give a little background of us of herself. So most of them know her, and she is a developer advocate at Github right now. And I think more than for past 6 to 7 years, she has been into software engineering, and she transitioned into a DevRel, and her story is really inspiring. I talked to her before, and she's also leading a program for women and non-binary for free, helping them to get into programming. So she is director of programming at G Code House, which is a non-profit, and that's really inspiring. That she's helping a lot of women and non-binary to get educated for free. And today we are going to discuss a lot of things. I'm handing over this session to Rizel. Over to you.
Thank you so much. That was a really nice presentation. Introduction, sorry. Let me share my screen and I'll jump straight into the presentation. So thanks everyone who's listening, and also thank you to Aviyel and Joshua for giving me this platform to speak. As y'all know, we're going to talk all about how to attract contributors to your open source project. So before I get into that, if you're listening in, feel free to type in the chat who your favorite celebrity is that you can think of just off the top of your head. I'll check it later. But for some reason, when I was making this presentation, I was thinking of Kanye West. He's not necessarily my favorite as of recently, but in the past, he was one of my favorite artists. And I recently watched a documentary about him on Netflix that him and his friend made and have been making for years. And that documentary just made me realize how much he influenced my musical taste as a pre-teenager, and how he changed the rap game. I think a little bit before his time, everyone was into gangster rap, talking about killing and stuff, and he kind of moved the industry more into backpack rap, which is more about conscious rapping. So mostly everybody knows him, whether you like him or not, or whether you actually listen to his music or not. And people know him for different reasons, good and sometimes bad. Some people might know him for the breakdowns that he often has, whether it's on social media or in public, and that's due to his battle with bipolar disorder. Some people might know him for his fashion line, and he owns a fashion brand called Yeezy. His sneakers in particular are popular, or you might best know him for his rapping. I believe he has about 21 Grammys, and he has different albums like College Dropout, The Life of Pablo, and Donda. But from the documentary, I learned that at one point, nobody wanted to sign him as a rapper. It was actually a big struggle for him to get signed as a rapper because he wasn't known for rapping. He was known as a producer. He had even produced half of Jay-Z's album called The Blueprint, and Rockefeller still didn't want to sign him as a rapper. They were like, no, you're a producer. So how did he become a rapper? He built a reputation by promoting himself and his music, community support, making good projects, and persistence. And y'all are probably like, we are here to talk about open source, not Kanye. So why are you talking about Kanye? But I actually think that if you want to if you want more people to contribute to your project and you want to build community, you can probably use some of the task or the concepts that Kanye used and apply that to your own project. So for your open source project, I strongly believe you have to promote it. You have to have that community support, make good projects, and be persistent. Before I go deeper into that, I'll introduce myself a little bit. Joshua already introduced me, but just to give more details, my name is Rizel Scarlett. I am currently a developer advocate at Github. I was a software engineer for like about 3 years after graduating from a coding bootcamp. I also did IT support for 2 years before that, and I'm also currently the director of programming at G Code House, which, like Joshua mentioned, is a nonprofit program that introduces women of color and non-binary people of color to code. And I'm super passionate, if you can't tell, about educating and empowering people about tech. And I'm pretty addicted to social media. I even had a MySpace when I was like 11 years old, which was under the age limit. On the topic of social media, feel free to follow me on Twitter, GitHub, Instagram, Hashnode, dev.to, and eventually I'll be on TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at Black Girl Bites. So that's literally my name at like every social media you can think of. So let's get into talking about applying those skill sets or things that Kanye did for his own brand to our open source projects. First, let's talk about promotion, right? You have to tell people about your project if you want people to actually contribute to it, because that's how they'll learn that it exists. If you don't tell them, they don't know it exists. So basically, for Kanye, he created his own buzz. There's like a scene in the documentary where he like walks into the different offices at Rockefeller and starts rapping. Nobody's listening to him, but he wants people to know, like, I'm a rapper and I rap. He also tried to appear on like different TV shows like MTV's You Heard It First in 2002. He showed his music to other rappers, even though they were like, I don't really care. He auditioned to rap on Def Jam, and he put out his own mixtapes. And while I was watching it, I was like, dang, this is kind of a humbling experience to just be like putting yourself out there and being like, please listen to me. But how would he know, or how would people know that he could rap if he didn't tell them? So in the same concept, for open source, you got to tell people. And here are some ideas of how you can tell people about your project. You can go to conferences and meetups and volunteer. Oftentimes they have a CFP or a call for proposal. They're looking for people to speak. This is your opportunity to talk about what you're building, why you built it, issues you faced along the way in building it, and any discoveries that you've made. Similarly, you can blog about it, right? Leverage Aviyel, leverage dev.to, leverage Hashnode to, again, talk about what you're building, why you're building it, issues you face, and discoveries you've made. Also, Twitter is a great place to also promote or talk about your project. As long as you're doing it in an authentic, non-pushy way, people will be interested and willing to support you. Twitter has a really large tech community, which y'all probably already know, and I think you should take advantage of it. Tweet about your blog posts and speaking events that you've done about the open source project. Tweet about like features that you released or bugs that you fixed, and even ask to speak on different Twitter spaces or podcasts. As you can see right now, there's like a big trend of people doing Twitter spaces and talking to other developers. That's a good opportunity. You can reach out to people doing Twitter spaces and be like, hey, I want to talk about my project. I want to talk about my journey. And I'm sure they would be happy to have you. If you're like, I don't know anyone who does Twitter spaces about open source projects, I'm one of them. So if you wanted me to talk about your project or to hear your side of the story, hit me up. Also, Hacktoberfest is a great way to promote your project as well. If you don't know what that is, it's an event in October that encourages people to make their first contributions to projects. If you tell Hacktoberfest, I want to participate as a maintainer, that can help you to recruit new contributors because you'll essentially have a label that says Hacktoberfest and people will know to check out your project and find issues and tasks there to help you out with. All right, so now that we have an idea of how to promote and how Kanye promoted and how we could promote, let's talk about community support. Community is such a large part of open source and just general life success. I imagine that's part of why you're part of Aviyel, because you know that together it's easier to reach your goals rather than doing it alone. Without community, I wrote you can't prosper. That's not true, but it's harder to prosper. And I also think support is a two-way street. So don't just be taking and taking and taking from your community. Also try to give back. So for Kanye, it was as simple as just leaning on family and friends. He didn't you don't have to have like this big, huge community. Just lean on your family and friends. That's how he gains his motivation and confidence, and from people who supported him. And he also gave back to them. From what I saw in the documentary, his mom was his biggest supporter and motivator. She wasn't a rapper, but she knew his songs. She listened to him. She enjoyed talking with him, and she encouraged him whenever he was doubting himself. He also had a group of Chicago friends. So if y'all didn't know, Kanye is from Chicago, and he moved to New York to pursue his dreams. He found a group of other people who were doing the same thing, who were also from Chicago, and he surrounded himself with them, and they brought themselves with each other. So when one person has success, they're like, yo, come in here, I got you, I can help you out. He either gave them a job, credit in different magazines, or helped them to produce music in return for supporting him and encouraging him. So you're probably like, it's hard to find people who are willing to support. But I don't think it's that hard. Most times people are willing to support you, especially if you've shown them genuine kindness and support in return. If they know you're a good person and you're just trying to thrive, people will most likely support you, even if it's just your family and friends. So for your open source projects, my suggestion to y'all is to highlight the contributors that you do have, or that have started to help you out. Establish a culture of kindness and provide a space for open discussion. So how could you do that? How can you highlight contributors? One way, or a couple ways you can do that, is once you start getting contributors, it can motivate people to contribute to your project if you highlight past contributors. So here's a project I found. I think it's from Codename 1 is the name of the project, and he's highlighting different people who contributed to his project. And I think by doing this, you're showing that you value and support your contributors, and potential contributors will be like, hey, this maintainer is really nice. I actually want to contribute to this project because I think that my efforts will not go in vain. I'll be supported. And by supporting them, you'll be known in the open source community as someone who's kind, as someone who's supportive. And in turn, they'll tell other people about your project too. So that's like kind of free promotion. Also, in establishing a culture of kindness, first step that you want to do is publish a code of conduct in your repository. And here's an example on the right side. Basically, that's just saying how people should behave within your community, no name calling, making sure you're empathetic towards other people, all that good stuff. So once you publish that code of conduct, it's important for you to also follow those guidelines, right? So you can't just expect everyone in your community to be kind, but you're not kind to the other contributors. So if you see a pull request, comments, issues, try your best to respond back in a kind, respectful manner to those contributors, because they're giving their time to help you build your project. And also, if someone in your community is not following the rules that you laid out in the code of conduct, do not make exceptions. There are consequences, whether it's that you said if they're not following the rules, you'll kick them out of the community, or you'll have a chat with them or something like that. Hold those standards to be true. That way people don't think you're playing favorites, or you're being loose with those standards, because very easily that can turn from a really good environment to a toxic environment with unkind language and harassment, and people will know your project to be one that's kind of negative. Also, I looked at the state of the Octoverse survey, and it looks like more projects have code of conducts, or more open source projects have a code of conducts than projects that don't have code of conducts. And the reason is because having a code of conduct attracts more contributors. That tells people, okay, I do want to contribute here because this is a safe space, and I know that my pull request and contributions will be respected. In the topic of creating a space for discussion, you want to create a place where contributors can engage with each other and ask questions in the open. You don't want it to be like they're kind of confused on how to do something and they have no one to ask, or they can only ask you. It's nice to have your community talk with each other and think about things together. Common options for creating a discussion space is you can either leverage GitHub. GitHub has a discussions feature that you can easily turn on. So as you can see here in these screenshots, this is what the discussions feature can kind of look like. You can also use Discord, you can use matrix.org, and you can use Mattermost. And then also on the topic of creating good projects. Now, I know good is a subjective term when it comes to code or music or art, but there are a few ways to indicate that your project is good. And okay, so basically what Kanye did is he knew he was creating good music. He knew it already. But what he did is he tried to get features with more well-known artists so that they can show their audience that, like, hey, this is Kanye, he makes good music, and I would only collaborate with him if I knew he made good music. So that kind of helped people take him more seriously as an artist. So how can we indicate to our target audience that our project is good? And we can do that by the following things, at least in my opinion. So it doesn't have to be that your open source project has like amazingly clean code or complex code, and it doesn't even have to be a life-changing project. I think telling your audience that your project is good is just by having it be easy to find, easy to use, and easy to contribute to. So when I say easy to find, one way that you can make your project easy to find is just by adding topics to your repository. So what do I mean by that? If you can see in this screenshot right here, this person has a repository and they added a couple topics. It says refactoring, Ruby, scientist, Ruby gem. And essentially, those topics are related to your project's intended purpose, the subject area, affinity groups, and other important qualities. This way, when people go to github.com/topics, they'll be able to, your project has a higher chance of showing up, right? So if they say github.com/topics and they're looking for Ruby projects, maybe this project will pop up and they'll be like, what is this? I'm interested in contributing to it. Also, making it easy to use. Making it easy to use is one step you can do for this is just by adding a README. That is like the first impression of your project. As soon as someone clicks on your repo, they see your README, right? And that is supposed to guide users on how to use your project. And I suggest that you add like the following things to your README. Add a project title, add a description, add installation instructions, and add usage instructions. And then also add a link to your live web app. That way people could click on it and be like, what's this? How does it work? I want to see it in action. And also add links to other important documents for people to easily find them, whether it's the code of conduct, your license, and your contributing guidelines. And then also, like I mentioned before, show off those contributors. The README is a good place to do that. And then also make it easy to contribute to. And one way I suggest doing that is by creating a contributing.md, which are your contributing guidelines that communicate to people how they should contribute to your project. So sometimes you may have like certain ways you want things done. That's where you would write that. So you can talk about the different technologies you use, how to report bugs, how to propose new features, how to open up a pull request in your project, how to claim an issue or task. So if an issue is open, how you prefer people to say, can I do that one? How to set up their environment, style guide, and code conventions that you prefer, and a link to the discussion forum or how people can ask for help. It's nice to have a project architecture in there if your project is a little bit complicated. And then it's nice to also include known issues. This contributing guidelines kind of serves as like a frequently asked questions post. That way they're not constantly hitting you up and you're like, oh man, I am exhausted. Like, you can just send them this contributing guidelines and it should answer most of the questions that people may have. Another way to make it easy to contribute is highlighting issues and labeling issues as good first issues. So the types of issues that you want to label as a good first issue are the ones that don't need that much project knowledge. Like, sometimes you need in-depth project knowledge to work on a ticket or a task. But if it's like something like turning a button blue, that could be a good first issue. Shouldn't be too difficult for someone who's just trying to get their feet wet and learn a little bit more about your project. The last thing I want to talk about is persistent. Even if no one is contributing to your project, keep it active. So for Kanye, like I said already a million times, at least the way that the documentary made it look, no one cared that he was rapping. No one cared that he was making these new music, even though he was a well-accomplished producer. But Kanye kept making new songs. Rappers did not want to listen, but it's okay. He kept making new music. He kept pushing on because he knew that eventually he would have to show other people his projects, his work. And so by believing in himself and having already created new music, he had an easy way to show other people why they should believe in him. So same for you. Contribute to your own project. You created it and you're like, man, I don't know what else to do. Make a new feature. Or another thing is setting up ways to make your project easy to manage and scale when you finally get a ton of contributors. So when I say that, I mean, like, when you get a lot of contributors, it can be hard to like manage the amount of people that are asking for help with issues or asking to be assigned to an issue, or maybe you need a better DevOps process. I suggest using GitHub Actions to handle the release process, CI/CD, and enabling users to self-assign issues. My manager, Brian Douglas, wrote this really cool GitHub action that helps users to self-assign issues. Normally in open source projects, you would say, hey, can I take this? And then a maintainer would get back to you and be like, yes, you can. And then they would assign you. But with this GitHub action, you can see an open issue and you can literally just type .take and it would assign you to that issue. And then you'll get an automated response that says, thank you for taking this on. If you have not already, join the conversation in our discussion. That kind of removes that back and forth that my manager would have to do. It makes his life way easier. And I think also just you constantly contributing to your own project may help people to like notice your project a little bit more. They're like, hey, what is this? It keeps coming up on my GitHub timeline that you're making commits or pushing new things to this project. I want to check it out. So just to summarize, all the things that you can do to help attract new contributors to your project, promote your project so other people know about it, whether that's at conferences, through blog posts, on social media, whatever, and establish community as well. You can start with your friends, your family, your coworkers. You can even start with Aviyel. That's already a community that you have. And it will eventually grow and grow and grow. And as it grows, create that safe space and supportive space for people by establishing a code of conduct and being kind to others. And then make your project good. And when I say that, I mean include documentation that shows your project is easy to use and easy to contribute to. And last but not least, do not give up. Your project will eventually attract new contributors. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen with time. That's it for my presentation. I want to thank y'all for listening and thank Aviyel and Joshua for giving me the platform to speak about open source.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it was a really great presentation. Thank you for that, for simplifying everything, right? So many people think that open source is like it's really hard to maintain, it's really hard to grow, but you simplified with an example of Kanye. Yet by taking that reference, it was really amazing. You simplified everything really well, and yeah. So we have a lot of comments over here. MT Foley says, "Yo, Rizel, nice setup."
Oh,
Yeah, and we have
hey.
Ramon. Oh, Ramon is here. So
Oh,
we have Ramon again. Back to this platform, Aviyel. Recently, we had an event with Ramon as well about his open source project. So we have Utkarsh from Aviyel. So he's saying that love the Kanye references throughout. Yeah,
yes.
everything was really smooth, and I guess everyone liked the presentation. And there are a few questions I would like to take up. So Akshay is asking a question: are there any downsides for starting an open source project as a maintainer?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I'm not a maintainer, but I've listened to a lot of maintainers over time, and I think one of the downsides is that it can get pretty busy. From what it sounds like, it can feel like you're always on, and like because you're the one maintaining the project, you have to respond to people. People want certain features and bugs fixed right away. But I think you have to learn to develop some kind of work-life balance or time management that allows you to be like, okay, I'm not going to work on this right now. I'm going to like watch TV or hang out with my family.
Right.
Also, hi to MT Foley and Ramon. Thanks for supporting.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, any more questions? You can use the Q&A section, and you can ask the questions directly so that we get a pop-up on screen. So MD Follow is asking, any tips on how to scope your open source projects?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, I'm probably having that problem now because I do want to maintain I want to become a maintainer, but it's like I'm like, oh, I want to do all these things. I think starting I might not have great advice on this, but I think starting small, I think oftentimes we want to put out an open source project that's like fully done. But like if even you have like a small commit or like an MVP of something, put that out and then eventually build up on it. That's like the best tips that I have from my limited experience.
Great. I think you covered a lot of things which you mentioned, that speaking in different podcasts, partnering with different communities, and maybe that can increase your traction right towards your project. At least people will know that, hey, this project exists even though they don't actively contribute. That can be a one way. And also to let you all know, this recording will be posted on Aviyel platform, so you can stay on our platform and you can follow us on all the social media platforms we are into, and we will be posting the announcement when recording is live. And there will be a detailed article of this whole event so that you don't miss it, and you can save it and use it for your future. So Ramon is saying, yeah, super hyped to see this. Such a good topic. Build it and they will come, but there's more to it. Definitely.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is.
Any more questions we would like to take? And we have like few more minutes, so you can ask Rizal directly. So I have few questions, like before
Sure.
someone asks. So what are the features you mentioned that GitHub provides to which helps maintainers, especially to reduce the hassle of maintaining a project, let's say assigning. Can you just repeat again? So what are the tools which
Oh,
GitHub especially
mentioned?
gives? Yeah.
Yeah. One of them that I mentioned, it was GitHub Actions, which both MT Folu, who's actually in the chat right now, and Bduggy and everybody else in the open source community, they have a good handle on using that. They use it to like help them release projects, or even just self-assign tickets. There's also, what was the other ones that I mentioned? The discussions feature in GitHub, using labels as well, and then using topics for your repository.
Great. Just thanks for that, so that our community gets a hold of these pointers. So there's another question. What was the motivation for GitHub behind launching the sponsor-only repositories?
Yeah, I think the motivation was that like they want maintainers to get paid for their work and to be more recognized for the work that they're putting in. It's like really common that maintainers are often underpaid and feeling overworked.
Yeah.
So I think by launching that sponsors only repository, they're encouraging more people to like sponsor open source maintainers and sponsor their projects.
Great. Great to see. And also you mentioned about the certain metrics, right? Where I think it was Octopus metrics, where you showed that if you do this, this much of percentage has more people watching. So can you just repeat it again?
Yeah. From the State of the Octoverse, they have a whole section on sustainable communities. So if you want to look that up, go ahead and look for the State of the Octoverse survey. But the thing that I highlighted was that the projects that had, first of all, there were more projects with code of conducts than projects that didn't, and the projects that had code of conducts had more contributors because people are like looking for the code of conduct. They're looking for contributing guidelines to know that this is like a well-organized and inclusive community.
Great. Yeah, thanks for reminding again, because that's very important to keep things clear, because contributors see a lot of things which you might not feel that, hey, let's do it another time, let's make it later. But it's very important to have a good readme file where it explains everything, including the code of conduct. That's a great point. Thanks for sharing. Any more questions? Like, we'll be there for a few more minutes and you can ask any question or you can put in the chats. I'm just curious if you have any other ways to contribute. I'm asking the participants, like the attendees, if you find any better ways to attract more contributors, you can put in the chats or you can comment on this event, right? Even after this event, we'll release an article and we can drive a discussion over there. So I would love to hear all the ideas you have to attract more contributors for open source project. And finally, what we are trying to do at Aviyel is basically to help open source projects to sustain and evolve. So we are trying to bring in some monetization avenues, which will eventually help to incentivize every contribution. It can be a non-code contribution or a code contribution. You will be rewarded. So we are bringing in that system. So your feedback would be really helpful for us. So Empty Foley says that I've tried spamming people projects to use my action, hasn't worked yet.
Yeah. I think he's I guess he has been, but I just sent back a joke saying persistence is key.
Yeah. So that's pretty much we have for today. And Rizel, we would definitely love to have more sessions. I think we'll have something for, we started a program called Contributors Roadmap, where we are helping open source projects to get new contributors and contribute, like early contributors who are beginner into coding, to get into open source projects. So there's a two-way program where we are benefiting projects to get in new contributors and benefiting contributors like beginners to learn how to contribute into big projects. So that's the whole thing. So is there any question by Ramon? Did Ramon ask any question?
Yeah, he did. He said, what's your take on offering mentoring?
I cannot see it. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But I see it. It says, what's your take on offering mentorship or onboarding sessions to folks interested in starting out, contributing to your project? It's of course not scalable, but when starting out, that's, first of all, my take is like, if you have the time, definitely sit down and mentor people. I think There's a couple projects that you could probably um partner with, or people could probably partner with as well. But if they get larger, like Outreachy or All In for Students, they probably have like strong suggestions on how to onboard and mentor people. But like maybe if you don't want to sign up for that, or like you're just doing a smaller project and you do have time, I would say like use your Discord and chat with people. If you like, I don't know, I'm the type of person that will go all out and like sit down on a Zoom call and help people if they need it. But as your project grows, I would say like um just build out as much documentation as possible and eventually build your community to the point that other people are kind of mentoring each other. So like I think like how Brian has his project, my manager, it's like he's not always the point of contact. Sometimes he has MT Foley or other people respond for him. Well, not for him, but they're so passionate about the project that they're also like taking on some of that work.
Okay. Thanks for that answer, because I cannot really see questions anyway. So MT Foley says, I guess supporting cloud IDEs can be
That's true.
helpful. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. That's great. I think it was a great discussion. Like people are interested to ask questions. I think we can drive a discussion in the blog. Like maybe you can comment it if you have any new ideas. And thanks for joining, and thanks Rizel especially. It's very morning in United States, I believe. So thanks for
Yeah.
thanks for attending, and thanks for accepting to join Aviyel. So we will be having more and more sessions on GitHub, especially for beginners who wants to understand how GitHub works and how we can contribute to open source. So hopefully we can plan something great in future. And thanks everybody for joining, and have a great night. Or Rizel, if you want to share any final note before we close.
Just thanks to the audience for showing up and asking questions, and thanks to you again for having me speak.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Ramon, MT Foley, and whoever has participated. And see you again.
All right. Bye.